ranking the 10 worst trades in NBA history. When it comes to being a GM of a franchise, it's not as easy as it looks. There is so much that goes into building a championship caliber team and being able to maintain the nucleus that has been developed. Scouting draft prospects for the future, structuring an all-stars contract, and attracting free agents on the market all play a significant factor in what makes or breaks an NBA franchise. However, with every transaction a GM of an NBA franchise makes, they could either save your franchise for the better or destroy a foundation. In this video today, we will take a trip down memory lane and dissect the 10 worst, incompetent, mind-blowing trades in the 73-year history of the NBA. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for more baller content. 2012, James Harden to the Houston Rockets. After being selected with the 3rd overall pick in the 2009 NBA draft by the Oklahoma City Thunder, it didn't take long for James Harden to find his niche. The Thunder had already had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook together balling out and contending for a championship. Adding Harden to the mix was no exception. After 3 years of playing together and just coming up short of an NBA championship to the hands of LeBron James and the Miami Heat, Oklahoma City was at a crossroads with Harden. Despite having the best year of his career and putting up above-average numbers, Harden was at the end of his contract with the franchise who gave him a chance. When you have Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook taking up the majority of your organization's cap space with the salary the two were getting paid, in addition to paying Kendrick Perkins a good chunk of the pot, you're going to have to make pay cut offers to players who may have earned that max contract deal. Harden's market value was at $60 million. However, the Thunder did not want to settle on matching the offer that Harden was worth. Instead, they offered him $4.5 million less of what his max deal could have been. Negotiations between the two parties did not follow through, which then resulted in Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey seizing the moment to get a steal from the Thunder. The Thunder gave up Harden for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and some draft picks. James Harden has gone on to have multiple seasons of scoring titles and building his legacy in Houston, while the Thunder went on to put their all into KD and Westbrook, who both eventually departed from the team. 1979, Magic Johnson to the Los Angeles Lakers. Magic Johnson is considered to be one of the all-time greatest players to ever put on a Lakers uniform and is an iconic legend in the history of the NBA. While everyone has a general knowledge of the history of the Lakers, what most don't realize is that the pick Los Angeles used to pick Johnson with wasn't originally theirs to start out with. The Jazz were the culprit of ultimately losing a diamond in the rough, giving up the 1st overall pick to the Lakers for Gail Goodrich in 1976. This led to the Lakers receiving 2 first-round picks and a second-rounder as well. Little did the Jazz know that they could have changed the course of history had they kept that first-rounder. It is also likely that history would have been written for the Jazz to have some banners up in their venue, as Magic Johnson would have been teamed up with Pistol Pete Maravich along with Adrian Dantley. This could have ignited a spark just enough to create a wildfire for several NBA championships in the Pelican State. Instead, though, the Lakers ended up with a Hall of Fame legend and a plethora of NBA titles to go along with them. As for the Jazz, they packed up their bags and moved west to Salt Lake City in Utah and have been in limbo, waiting for that first championship banner to be hung in Vivint Smart Home Arena. 1970, Oscar Robertson to the Milwaukee Bucks. In 1960, Oscar Robertson was about to embark on a memorable journey in his life with the game of basketball. With a territorial pick the Cincinnati Royals had, they selected the local college star that already had his name enshrined forever with the University of Cincinnati. Little did the people know what Oscar Robertson did would impact the local natives of the Queen City. The productivity that Robertson brought to the court was anything but dull from the moment he checked into his first game. The guy was incredibly gifted as an athlete and contributed more than any coach of an NBA franchise could ask for. Averaging a triple-double in his first 5 seasons with the Royals, things looked to be bright for the organization moving forward. But things started to take a dip in his later years with the Royals, despite Oscar Robertson still contributing and being the best at what he does. But in 1970, jealousy brewed with a former teammate of Oscar's who was now the head man of the Royals. While it was speculated and nothing verified the facts of why this happened, Bob Cousy did the unthinkable in a move that no one in the sports media could ever see coming. Robertson was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks for Flynn Robinson and Charlie Paulk. This was just what the Bucks needed to compete for a title. with Robertson in the backcourt and the Bucks drafting a young rising star by the name of Lou Alcindor, who played in the post, the perfect combination of quick athleticism and a strong glass game, it was inevitable for the Bucks to win their first and only NBA championship. 1998, Dirk Nowitzki to the Dallas Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki is an all-time legend that will go down as the greatest European to ever suit up in the NBA. As the first European in league history to win MVP, Dirk paved the way for other up-and-coming talented stars from the Eastern Hemisphere to shine in the NBA. But what most Maverick fans won't admit to you is that Dirk actually wasn't drafted by the franchise. Instead, it was the Milwaukee Bucks who drafted the 7-foot lanky big man from Germany. The game of basketball was a different era back in the 1990s. More teams played a much more physical style of basketball than they do today. What the Bucks were looking for was a much bigger man who had the bulkiness and strength to complement their style of play. Robert Traylor was the perfect prospect the Bucks were desperate to have. He was a guy who averaged a double-double in Ann Arbor, Michigan with the Wolverines of the University of Michigan. But Dirk's upside was just too much for Dallas to pass on for Traylor. So the Mavericks gave up the big bulky man for the unproven commodity out of Germany. The end result? Traylor didn't last a decade in the league and severely underperformed for what the Bucks gave up for him. As for the Mavericks and Dirk, they would go on to win an NBA title and have a long-lasting partnership, earning accolade after accolade in Dirk's 21 years in Dallas. 1987, Scottie Pippen to the Chicago Bulls. When you think of Scottie Pippen, the first thing that comes to mind is the 6 championship rings that he won together with Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls. Pippen and Jordan were a dynamic duo. His raw athletic ability and superb ball defending skills, along with his competitive nature, makes Pippen an all-time great in the Windy City. What's fascinating to know is that the Bulls did not select Scottie in the 1987 NBA draft. The team that Pippen would have played for if he wasn't traded would have been the Seattle Supersonics. Needless to say, the Supersonics at the time were in need of a center. Olden Polynice was the man exchanged for Pippen. Polynice was just a bench warmer for the Supersonics for the 5 seasons he was there. History would have definitely been different. Who knows if Michael Jordan would have won those 6 titles? Then there would have really been a reason for debate of who the GOAT really is. That's the kind of impact Pippen had on the history of the game. As for Seattle, they no longer exist. 1976, Moses Malone to the Buffalo Braves. The NBA and ABA were merging together and had a dispersal draft in 1976. A player by the name of Moses Malone was in that very draft. The Portland Trail Blazers would select Moses with the 5th overall pick. Not realizing the talent they drafted, the Trailblazers decided to trade away Malone to the Buffalo Braves for a first-round pick and $232,000 in cash. Malone would go on to a Hall of Fame career, winning MVP of the league 3 times. What is ironic about the trade is that Portland ultimately did have success by winning a championship the next year, but have yet to see another banner raised in the Moda Center. Had they kept Moses, the history of the franchise would have looked a lot different than it does now. 1968, Wilt Chamberlain to the Los Angeles Lakers. Wilt Chamberlain is one of those players who set the standard for players having a reason to demand being traded to another team. This is why you saw players like Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, and Kawhi Leonard make the NBA World Rumble when they made it clear they wanted off of teams who they felt were limiting their potential. With the 76ers and Chamberlain having an obvious feud with one another, the writing was on the wall that Wilt would be leaving the city of brotherly love. Wilt ultimately dictated where his destination would be. Little did the 76ers know that they would be swindled. The Lakers gladly took Chamberlain for an exchange of 3 players, Darrell Emhoff, Jerry Chambers, and Archie Clark. The trade was so lopsided that one of the 3 players didn't even suit up in uniform for the 76ers. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Wilt went on to play for 5 more seasons, appearing in 4 NBA Finals and adding a championship to his already exceptional career. 1996, Kobe Bryant to the Los Angeles Lakers. Kobe Bryant is the golden standard of what basketball is all about. The way he carried himself on and off the court as a human set a standard for what all athletes strive to be. Kobe had a future in the sport at a young age, but Lakers GM Jerry West knew that Bryant's potential was limitless before he even became a Laker. Before the draft, the Lakers set up a meeting with Kobe to showcase his talent. What followed next was Jerry West taking every measure possible to get Kobe in Los Angeles. The Charlotte Hornets selected Kobe with the 13th overall pick in the 1996 NBA Draft. But what followed next was a trade for the ages. The Lakers sent Vlade Divac to the Hornets for the rights to Kobe. While Divac was a decent player in the league, he only lasted 2 seasons with the Hornets. While the Lakers got rid of their starting center, they used it as leverage to sign Hall of Fame player Shaquille O'Neal to play with Kobe. Together, they created a dynasty for the ages and won 3 consecutive championships. 1975, Kareem AbdulJabbar to the Los Angeles Lakers. In 1969, a coin toss ultimately decided that the Milwaukee Bucks would have the first pick in the NBA Draft. They used that selection to select Lou Alcindor, a highly talented prospect out of UCLA. The Bucks did live to rejoice the selection, winning a championship in 1971 with Alcindor and Oscar Robertson. But once Robertson retired, Alcindor, now known as Kareem AbdulJabbar, became unhappy with the direction the Bucks franchise was headed and wanted out. The 2 cities Kareem preferred to go to were Los Angeles and New York because he wanted to grow his image to a bigger stature. The Bucks finally gave in and sent Kareem to the Lakers. In exchange for Kareem, they received Junior Bridgman, Dave Myers, Elmore Smith, and Brian Winters. But looking back now, what the Bucks gave up is something the franchise will be haunted by forever. Kareem went on to win 5 more championships with the Lakers and ultimately won the hearts of millions of fans for his style of play. 1956, Bill Russell to the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have a long history of winning championships. A large part of this had to do with what Red Auerbach did to build a nucleus around Bill Russell. The St. Louis Hawks had the 2nd overall pick in the 1956 NBA Draft. While the Hawks chose Russell, African American athletes weren't very well received by the team back then, as the Hawks had only had white players up to that point. Red Auerbach saw the great player that Bill Russell was and decided to lure him away from the Hawks in exchange for 2 white players, Cliff Hagan and Ed McCauley. What the Hawks gave up was a player who ended up being the most coveted player in sports history. The Hawks did go on to win 3 conference titles, but they took a big hit by giving up Russell. Russell would face the Hawks 4 times in the NBA Finals in 1957, 1958, 1960, and 1961. Out of those 4 bouts, Russell came away with the last laugh, winning 3 of them. Any other crazy trades you can think of? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, now that you're here, leave us a like and subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed this video. And remember, turn notifications on to receive more amazing sports content. We hope you enjoyed our video. See you next time at Baller Central.